So it seems that the video got a little bit corrupted in the original version, and some of the footage of me sewing the eye has gone missing. So I've just set up this very wobbly spare frame, and I'm going to demonstrate eyes on these two patches that I've done. So either you filled the head as a block, or you might have left the eye as a negative space. So I'm going to do one each way. They're both pretty much the same, but all you do, and I'm using a dark blue because that's what came out of the basket first. All you do is you just place the eye where you want it. It doesn't have to be central on the blocked in face. It can be a little bit off centre, and that looks quite nice. Or you can put it right in the middle. It's your face, and you can change the expression as you see fit. And all I'm doing is I'm split stitching on top of the laid and couched work. And I'm going to do slightly pointed little eye. I'm going to give it a bit of a flick at the side. So I've done that nice arch over the top. And then another one around the bottom. And I'm leaving it slightly pointy. And then this might not be exactly the same as the one in the original, but that doesn't matter because every dragon's different. They can all have slightly different expressions. And it's interesting when you're doing faces, actually, that the placement of a single stitch can make all the difference to the expression on a human or an animal face. Now, I need to put the pupil in, and I want that to be slightly shiny. So I'm just going to do a series of little satin stitches. Now, I would always be the first person to tell you that medieval embroidery doesn't use satin stitch, and that's because I spent years being an authenticity officer for a reenactment group. So I've just put 4 little satin stitches in there, placed towards the top for the eye, and I'll pull that out there. Yes, I spent many years as an authenticity officer, and if you tell the average reenactor, yes, you can use satin stitch for medieval stuff, they will come back a week later having embroidered an entire cloak using 4-ply knitting wool with 12-inch long satin stitches. The fact is, medieval embroidery only uses satin stitch where you want to fill a space that's no bigger than a single stitch. So I'm just going round and adding a little white to that eye. It's really just an arc. It's just to give a little bit of expression. That one's come out a little bit mean. Some dragons are mean. But I'm just going to put a tiny little stab of white just inside the eyelid, just to give it a bit more expression. You don't really want it showing very much. I've pulled that in a little bit too far. Might do a little bit more, just to give it a bit more depth. Now that's quite a pronounced eye because it's sitting on top of the laid and couched work, and I think I have done that at a slightly different angle to the one that I did on the original. The other option is if you've left a sort of negative space for the eye where you can see the cloth through at the back. Now, this is exactly the same procedure. I'm doing exactly the same eye, but the difference that it will make is that the eye will be a little bit more deep set. So I'm working around the outside of my little gap there. And you can see already that as I split stitch around that, it is already a much, much deeper eye. And I'm going to go around the other side. The alternative is you could just go around the outside of that little circle and not give it any of these sort of little flicks of eyelashes if you don't want to. You could just make it a completely round, like a googly eye. I'm sorry if the camera's bouncing a little bit. I'm having a bit of a problem with my camera arm. I think I might have to go and order a new one. Now I've sort of slightly pulled that in a little bit, so I'm just going to pull it back out by splitting through it again. Now, then I'm just going to do my little satin stitches again to fill in the eyeball. In fact, I think I will go and buy a new camera arm. This feels very bouncy. So I'm just going to go back up the top there and add one at that end. Now, you could just leave it like that because you can see the white of the canvas through at the back, and that gives you a much more deep set look to the eye and it gives it a bit more depth. Or you can go back to your white thread, which I've got over here. Oops. And you can work around it there with just some very short split stitches. So it's just really, really simple. You got to remember this is quite cartoony, this dragon. So you're just going very basic. There's nothing particularly sophisticated about it. It's just a very, very simple eye. And then the other thing you can do is, if you want to, you can make your dragon a girl Mickey. You could give her some eyelashes, perhaps just 3, like to one side, a little bit coquettish, or you could go all the way around. You don't have to add eyelashes, but you can if you want to. So that's all you've got to do for the eyes on your little dragon.